I think there's a lot of good proposals out there on where to cut state spending. I think Senate Republicans have identified $6.8 billion worth of cuts. Speaker Madigan and Tom Cross in the House have gotten together on certain budget proposals. I think those are great first steps to finally shine the light on where spending can be cut. But let's talk about spending cuts. The reason that we continually hear a debate on spending cuts and where to cut spending is because our fiscal house is not in order. So I think the purpose of today is to talk about how we can get our fiscal house in order with three fundamental spending reforms, and that is audits to put a restraint on government, PAYGO to develop the efficiencies of government, and audits to spotlight the inefficiencies. And that's where I think the focus and spotlight should be today is on the fundamental spending reforms.
Of all of the things on here, perhaps, and it's a big perhaps, only workers' comp could happen by June 1st. And even things like audits, if you began them, they wouldn't be in place. What specifically are you talking about that's actually going to make an impact on the next budget? Yeah, if we had this for 10, 12 years, maybe we wouldn't be here, but we are here. And how do we move forward?
Well, it's a good question. I think we do have time in this legislative session, although time is of the essence, to put forth all three fundamental principles of spending reform. For instance, by cutting back spending to a reasonable level and then capping that spending going forward, that can be done in this legislative session, and it needs to be done because what the people are saying is that higher taxes, higher borrowing, and higher spending is unsustainable for families and businesses.
You're hearing a number of different numbers. The House is 33.2, the Senate is 34.6, the governor wants to spend 35.4. What's your number? What would you put the spending cap at if you could?
Well, I'm of the belief that we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. So I think the purpose and focus of today needs to be on fundamental spending reforms.
Back to 29, what would you spend? What's the price tag? You looked at the numbers, you looked at the revenue projections, you looked at Quinn's proposed budget. Got a price tag?
Well, I'm going to take my cues right here from Tony Preckwinkle on the Cook County Board up in Chicago. The Cook County budget is about $3.6 billion. She was just able to get consensus on a budget that cut $500 million. It was a 16% cut up there. And this is the process that she used. She outlined fundamental principles and then negotiated the cuts with her agency heads and department heads, and they were able to cut 16%. I'm not a legislator. I'm not trotting out a budget today. I'm outlining the fundamental principles of spending reform, and then the budget cuts are up to the lawmakers to negotiate, and I'm comfortable with that.
What do you think of the newfound, or maybe not so new, Speaker Madigan's fiscal focus? Are you happy? Is that something that you could get behind? He seems to be one of the more fiscally conservative people in the State House.
Well, these are necessary first steps, and having finally the two-way conversation with the families and the businesses of this state, rather than jamming down policy from the top, I think is a good first step in the right direction. Now, that being said, we've all heard a lot of talk over the years here in Springfield about fiscal responsibility. It's in the action, and right now, at this moment in our state's financial history, the people are saying that they want action in Springfield on the principles and values that they live by at home. So that's why I think our press conference today is perfectly timed. There's impetus and there's movement in the right direction. Good first steps have been taken, and now it's time to put in some fundamental spending reform that can not only solve our problems now, but make sure that we don't get back in the same situation in 3 or 4 or 5 years from now.
On a somewhat related topic, you mentioned that you're hearing from people that it's, let's live within our means, let's cut back. That seemed to be the message of maybe not this week's election, but the last election. Given that there's been so much focus and so much of the campaign last fall was on jobs and the economy, are you surprised at all that, and some of the newer lawmakers can answer this too, that there seems to be a push for some conservative social issues We've seen a number of bills on abortion. We've seen a number of bills on guns. Is that what, when you say that people want fiscal restraint, are you surprised? Do they also want this sort of push into these conservative social issues, or was it all about jobs for the voters that you were talking to?
In the rooms that I've been in and the rooms that I've assembled, it's been purely on the financial issues. And those examples, the three examples of the businesses in different parts of the state, a downtown law partner, a Park Ridge web developer, a downstate Effingham manufacturer, a southern Cook County manufacturer. These are representative stories from around the state of the economic engine of the state, the businesses, common stories that they feel that were spent, that they just don't have any money any longer that government can come back to. So that's exactly where the rooms have been that I've been in.
You are clearly very for audits of the current Workers' Compensation Commission, but I mean, everything that we've seen coming out recently, especially down at the Menard Correctional Facility, there's a very big sense that this system is just plain wrong. Why not go forward with, for example, Representative Bradley's measure to just eliminate the whole commission and start over? Why not do that? Why go through the audits? Why not just start over?
Well,
So Dwight, let Dwight
I would be
answer.
happy if you don't mind. I think it's a great question, but I think the answer is simply this. The situation at Menard and all the problems we've talked about today that relate to spending and how we run our state goes to being how responsible and how responsible we can all be and how much leadership we can all show. And I don't mean to be cute about this, but if I ran my business, which is pretty large, if I ran my business like this state does, I'd be out of business. There are some common sense things you do to fix things. And if you want to fix them, and I say if you want to, you start with an audit, whether you're a business or you're state government. What I have seen are people who are conservative in their approach. Tom Cross has been extremely conservative in pushing the envelope when it comes to living within your means and being responsible. The reason I don't think you want to turn over the workers' compensation system to the court system is just this. The perception in the state, and only maybe in some counties, is just this. You have a injured worker who hires a lawyer, and you have a company who hires a defense attorney. And they both get paid a lot of money. And then you take that case to a court where you have a judge who may have sympathies one way or another because either the defense lawyer or the plaintiff's counsel in most cases may have contributed to one of those campaigns for a judge. So you see, I'm not saying the system is necessarily bad. I'm just saying that people have the perception that it could be. And frankly, people in my district have come back and said, we need one thing in the reform legislation that's out there. We don't need to put this in a courtroom. You know, they're already stacked up already with cases that are really meritorious. We don't need to fill that up with workers' comp cases. What we really need is one thing, which most other states have embraced, and that's the thing called primary cause. If the injury is directly and proximately, primarily related to the work, then that's compensable. And if it's not compensable. Most states around us have done that. It's a equitable way to define causation. And the fact that Illinois has not come to the table simply says this, sir. It says that we have all catered to special interests too long. Trial lawyers, doctors, labor unions, and whomever else has some say in the process. We can do better. So we just need to fix what we have.